Good morning, and welcome to the Paul Green Comedy Podcast. It is May 12th, 2024. This is episode 165. Am I almost halfway through the year? Almost at 6 months? What would 6 months be? Let's see, 365 days. So what's that? 180? 182 or something like that? A few more weeks. I will have done this 6 months daily. How about that, everybody? So, this is my daily comedy podcast. I consider myself a dreamer. I go for dreams. I pursue them, and I talk about them, and document my journey as a stand-up comedian and as an actor, trying to just figure this game out day by day. Last night, I went to dinner with my good buddy, Jim, and he watches the podcast daily, and he said, Paul, I watch your podcast daily, and it sounds like you're bipolar. Because he just said, some days you're really excited, and the next day you're really depressed and discouraged. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. It is... Man, it is just this, it's just up and down all the time, at least for me. I can't speak to anybody else's experience, but I don't know. I just, the constant friction between where I'm at, where I want to be, not even really knowing if where I want to be is possible, and having to constantly grapple with the day-to-day. And, it's hard to see the forest from the trees and all of that, because on a day-to-day basis, the needle doesn't seem to move at all. And maybe it doesn't move. Or sometimes maybe it feels like it moves backwards. And, someday you'll have one day you'll have a really good set, and it feels like, oh, cool, I'm moving in the right direction. And then 2 days later, you'll do that exact same set, and it doesn't go well. And then you have to go like, well, why didn't it go well last night? And why did it go well 3 nights ago? And, am I ever going to get to a point to where it goes well all the time? And then it's also really hard to know if it actually went as bad as you thought it did, or if it was as good as you thought it was. So there's just a lot of that, just a lot of the ups and downs. And yeah, I do have a tendency to sway a little bit emotionally with whatever happened most recently. And sometimes I feel really good about something, and sometimes I don't feel as good about it. So, but this last week was a very crazy week for me. So, Wednesday night, I did a show up in North Phoenix at Rick Bronson's House of Comedy. Thursday night was the first live taping of the Let's Have a Midlife Crisis comedy podcast. I keep saying comedy podcast. Midlife Crisis, Let's Have a Midlife Crisis podcast. At JP's Comedy Club, and then I drove to San Diego, and then I did a set at Mic Drop Comedy Club in San Diego, California, and then the next day I drove back to Phoenix, and I did a gig at a tap room, like a brewery in downtown Phoenix. And then today I'm going to go host 2 back-to-back open mics at the NCT open mic, which I helped spearhead and create. And today is the first day that we are actually going to have 2 open mics back to back, which was always my vision, was to be able to do multiple sets in a day in the same location. That was something that existed in LA, and now it is exists here in Arizona, despite tremendous backlash and criticism. Although, I mean, it's like most things, like there's the few people who are actually complaining are just the loudest, but the majority of people don't care. And then there's a lot of people who go, oh, that's actually a good That's a good format, a good open mic format for me. I'm going to go do that. So let's see. Last night's show didn't go as well, speaking of bipolar, as I would have liked. It was an interesting show. So it was at this brewery in downtown Phoenix. It was a really nice venue. It was a newer venue, very modern. It's kind of in this sort of gentrified part of downtown Phoenix. Like right across the street. It's one of those weird where like there's old houses and then like right next door there are these like brand new businesses that used to be houses, but then they got converted. And then one block away are all of these condemned houses with fences around them that are probably waiting to be gentrified. It's kind of one of those sort of interesting, artsy kind of feel type neighborhoods. And so, yeah, they did my friend Saskia B, who's an incredibly funny comedian, produced a comedy show, and it was a music comedy show for music comedians, and she had me headline it. The thing is it's funny, as I don't actually consider myself a music comedian. I really only do one. Well, I say one. There are 3 bits that I do that involve music. I have one pre-written like music comedy song about Disney's Never Had a Bald Prince. I've been doing that bit for 6 years, maybe 8 years. The other musical bit I do is I do this montage where I string a bunch of songs together that have Nana in it. I've been doing that for 10 years. And when I do that, 90% of the time when I do it, I don't even play piano because I just kind of rattle off all of these Nana songs. And it's kind of like my closing bit because it's high energy and it's very aggressive. It's just like, here it is. But usually it gets like a big round of applause, and it's a good way to sort of end my sets, especially when I'm doing like a longer set or closing or headlining. Other than that, the only other bit is my improvisational musical bit where I interview an audience member and then improvise a song about them. And, I do that. I do that a lot, especially when I don't have a lot of material that I feel good about, or I'll do that if I'm doing a longer set that's sort of more featuring me. So anyway, I get asked to do this musical comedy show. Well, all of the comics before me were strictly music comedy acts, meaning they had a guitar. Excuse me. And it was just like a quick premise and then like a fully fleshed out comedic song. And I'm sitting there going, and I'm going last, which means I have to follow all of these other music comedians who have really put a lot of effort into constructing a musically, like a musical. And so I started to feel a little bit like, oh, shoot, this actually isn't what I am. I don't have a fully fleshed out written, these are the songs, these are the comedic songs type of set. And then I was supposed to headline, and the guy who went right before me did really, really well. He was really funny, good guitar player, had some really funny songs. He closed with a real high energy song. He got the whole audience singing along with him, and I'm going, oh boy. And because what I wanted to do was go up and predominantly just do stand-up and run through the material that I have been working on, and then close with interviewing some audience members and then improvising a song about them. So I got a little like, what am I going to do here? And I'm sort of trying to grapple in my mind how I should navigate this. So the only thing that I did is like, well, I'll throw my Disney Prince song back in there because it is a written musical bit, although I hadn't planned on doing that. And then I'm just going to tell the audience, like, hey, everybody, I'm going to do stand-up first. And then I started doing my stand-up. And I don't know. It went okay. I didn't feel like the audience was totally with me. I riffed a few jokes up front, which I thought would be funnier than they were. Which I do that a lot. Whenever I'm doing a show, I'm always sort of taking in the surroundings, taking in the event, taking in the location, taking in what's happened before, and just say, what can I riff on? What can I make jokes about that connect me to this specific performance? And I tried to do that, and the jokes just weren't as funny to the audience as I thought they were in my head. So I'm kind of like already off on a bad foot. And then I didn't do music comedy. I said, hey, everybody, I'm just going to start doing some stand-up. So I started going into my new stand-up material, which also isn't worked out and which I'm still in the process of refining and iterating. And I pretty much did the same set that I had done Friday night, only I had been listening to the recording of my performance Friday night and picking out where some of the jokes didn't really land. And so I had rewritten a couple of the jokes, hoping that, to tighten it up a little bit, to make it a little bit more funny than what I had done Friday night. And so I was wanting to test out some of those new jokes or whatever, but it just wasn't really going well from the beginning. And so I don't know. It just didn't go great. And then I got to the song portion. I interviewed this couple. They were a lot of fun. I felt like the audience was kind of with it. The other problem is it was, the venue itself isn't ideal for comedy. It's this big open sort of tavern cabin style. It has like a big high roof. Anybody who does comedy know high roofs are not great. So it's very echoey in there. The sound system was somebody just brought in sort of a portable PA system. Not a great sound. It's very boomy, and plus it's an active tap room, and so people are walking in during the middle of your set because the stage was right by the front door. So people would just walk in who didn't know there was a comedy show, and then, they look over it. It's like, I'm doing stand-up right here. And then they just walk in and just walk right through the middle of the thing and then go get their drinks. And then, they're buying their beers at the counter. And so there's, so it, like, in that terms, it's not like super ideal. But the musical comics who went before me did really well and got some huge laughs. And the people, it seemed like there were a lot of people who were there for the comedy show. So trust me, I've seen a lot worse when it comes to doing shows in bars and in restaurants with stages. And so I can't really say that the reason it didn't go well was all external. No, a lot of it was me. A lot of it, so it was part that I wasn't actually doing what the show indicated, which was musical comedy. I mean, I was not doing as much nearly as much musical comedy as the acts that went before me. And, and then I was doing stand-up, and I'm doing stand-up material that's all new. That's all less than a month old, so it's not really dialed in yet. And then on top of that, it's not the most, intimate, ideal venue. I mean, it was really long. There's big spaces in between tables. It's a pretty spread out thing. So anyway, I had the dude kind of heckling me a little bit, who's kind of yelling out, responding. And then I was a little miffed. And so I kind of went at him a little bit. And that, like not in a way that the audience appreciated as much. I mean, they kind of laughed, but I was a little agitated, and so yeah, it didn't feel great. But yeah, there's a lot of things that I need to do a better job at. Number one is to reference my friend saying that I seem bipolar in my podcast because I'm so up and down. I'm going, yeah, that's probably some good feedback that I really need to try to find a way to not be so emotionally reactionary to each individual gig, the highs or the lows. Oh, that was the best gig ever, and oh, that was the worst gig ever, and then allowing those, like each individual performance to influence too drastically my mood and my ambition and my drive. So there's definitely something there to look at. It's a matter of me trying to get to a point to where it's just all information, it's just all feedback, and it's right. And that situation didn't go as well. What can I improve on, and how can I do better today? So that is a good lesson, and I think for anybody out there pursuing a dream, especially trying to anyone navigating a dream that has these kind of highs and lows and ups and downs, and you're constantly in front of other people and constantly needing to be able to perform and to perform well and to perform at a high level. And sometimes it goes well, sometimes it goes bad. Trying to fortify the emotional constitution necessary to weather those ups and downs without allowing the highs or the lows to overly influence your emotional state. So definitely something for me to look at there is, how can I not be so emotionally connected and concerned? And it's funny because it's something that I feel on stage too, of just this sort of, oh no, that joke didn't go bad, and then I kind of go into panic mode, and this anxiety creeps up in me on stage, and then I don't really feel safe, or I don't really feel comfortable or in my body, and so a lot of what I'm doing is coming from sort of a frantic survival energy. And when I don't feel that, when I'm just relaxed and comfortable and confident in what I'm doing, I present very differently. But how do I generate that feeling of safety and confidence and being relaxed on stage when something has happened that has triggered my nervous system to go fight or flight? This ain't going well. And then, whatever childhood drama I'm projecting into that moment starts to creep up. So something for me to look at, something for me to think about, and to start to see if I can do a better job at just not having every individual show be so high stakes all the time and so emotionally reactionary to each individual show or circumstance. So I will see how that goes. So I am going to go ahead and call today's episode here. Looking forward to doing 2 repetitions of my comedy set at the NCT Open Mic at 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. There are now 2 different open mics back to back. So I'm going to go get ready for that, decide what jokes I want to work on, and see how that goes. All right, everybody. So that is all for me today here at the Paul Green Comedy Podcast, a podcast by a dreamer for dreamers, episodes 165, May 12th, 2024. Happy Mother's Day to all of you mothers out there. I have texted my mom. I have not heard back from her as of yet. So hopefully some of her other kids are taking care of her for the time being. And love you all so much. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you tomorrow.